Welcome, friends, to the second day of the Global FinTech Fest. I hope you all are enjoying the event. Today, we bring to you a fireside chat on the topic changing contours of bank fintech collaboration in the post COVID world. May I invite Ms. Nayantara Rai, Chief of Delhi Bureau, ET News Now, and Ms. Arundhati Bhattacharya, Chairman and CEO Salesforce India, for the session. I'll now request Nayantara to take over the proceedings.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to day two, the inaugural session. We, of course, are in a fireside conversation with Ms. Arundhati Bhattacharya. She needs absolutely no introduction. Uh, Thank you, Ms. Bhattacharya, for agreeing to this conversation. I'd like to begin by just telling you I was a rookie reporter who used to harass you incessantly with phone calls when you were at SBR. So I'm indeed very grateful that I now get to interview you in a new avatar. We're seeing what is happening with fintech, with technology, and it's amazing how you have actually managed to adapt so very fast, and it actually proves what we've all been discussing as well, that age no bar when it comes to technology, right? And I think you are a great testament to that, and how you have shown that. Ms. Arundhati Bhattacharya, today's conversation is supposed to be on changing contours of bank fintech collaborations in the post-COVID world, with a specific focus on balancing innovation and security in payments, a global outlook. You know, for whatever reason, COVID-19, whatever it is, never have we had so many people stuck at home, not able to go to offices. Out of compulsion, perhaps they've had no choice but to accept fintech as the new normal. I want to begin first by asking you, at Salesforce, how did you spearhead this? I'm sure you saw a surge in traffic, a surge in demands from clients. It must have been very, very difficult, at least the initial days. What have been some of the biggest learnings, and what would you say are the new normal that will continue in the post-COVID world, the innovation you've come out with at Salesforce?
So I think, what we are seeing from most customers and CXOs, and not only customers, from all the CXOs and all the other people that I used to know quite well when I was in the bank, I've spoken to a number of them, and most of them, have two things invariably in their conversation. One is omni-channel, and the other is access from anywhere. Okay. So whether it be for employees or customers or vendors or suppliers, they all want to ensure that they are able to access them from anywhere and allow them to access the company on all channels, meaning it could be physical, but it could also be online, it could be hybrid. So I think every one of the companies that we are talking to is talking along these lines. The other thing also that I'm seeing that companies are becoming more aware about is the need for innovation. They are realizing, that the business models are not going to remain the change. Talent, really good talent, will now seek much more than was being given by companies earlier. So even if you're looking at IT talent, there is a big competition, as you know, for really good IT talent, because all of the world comes shopping in India for that. Okay. And there you will need really good conditions of work to ensure that you're getting the best of IT talent. Now, those conditions of work will include the ability to work from anywhere. So people will want not only to be in office, but to be at home and to be wherever they want to be at their, convenience. So I think the whole world that we are looking at now, it's a changed paradigm. And for this change paradigm, if you're going to address it properly, you have to have an innovative mindset. You've got to keep the old thinking aside. I remember in 2015, for instance, when I tried to push very hard for a work from home platform, because, so many women were having to let go of their careers as they were needed at home. There was a lot of pushback, and the pushback came not only from my male colleagues, it also came from my female colleagues, because people believe that if you allowed people to work from home, then they wouldn't be that productive, that they would be using their time elsewhere. However,
Yeah.
this lockdown has forcefully conducted that experiment and shown us that people can be just as productive. Today, when I give the example of our own company, where we have seen attendance, being super, super good, productivity being really good. And, in fact, even we have seen, for instance, in respect of, say, things like service support. In case of service support, we have found that, if a request lands up on your screen at even maybe 2 in the night, people are getting up and addressing it, though they are not supposed to or not required to. So, productivity has gone up. Our turnaround times have become better. So when I give these examples, then, the companies come back and say, well, we don't have the tools to monitor productivity that well, but the tools are available. So, at the end of the day, we've got to understand that we've got to change not only the way people work, but our thoughts about what a workplace should look like. Okay.
Correct.
So, the boundaries are getting broken. A lot of things are getting broken down. And I think that can only be managed if you properly integrate technology in whatever offerings you have in order to give you that handle, give you that ability to still be in charge, to still be able to control, to still be able to, really get to where you need to get.
So, having said that, Ms. Bhattacharya, I think we'll know post lockdown also if we will all be as productive later on when we won't have, cinemas to go to, shopping malls, or even, play hooky by going on holidays and pretending to be at work. So I think the acid test is still here left. But having said that, Ms. Bhattacharya, you headed India's largest bank. Now you are at Salesforce. So if I could ask you, what will be the future of banks, because you're saying if everything has to be at home, and the fact that we don't, what the lockdown has shown is that we don't need to go anymore to that brick and mortar bank. Look at UPI now, it's talking about auto pay, recurring payments, is putting a maximum value of 2,000 rupees, but I don't need a credit card anymore, for example, to pay for my Netflix subscription or to pay for an insurance premium. What is the future of a bank?
So, the banks, we will have to determine what they are going to look like. They could be actually asset light and distribution heavy, okay? Or they could lead with liabilities and be asset light as well. So, there are a number of things that are going to happen. It is not true that all banks will be similar. Banks will be different because they will concentrate on different niche items. But it's also true that there could be banks that addresses across the board most of these niche. Okay. So I think, going forward, you will see that workplaces will begin to look different. Brick and mortar, while it will still be there, because, at the end of the day, people trust a bank which can be seen physically. So it will still be there. It will not disappear. But the importance of that brick and mortar will come down. So you will still be then able to access and do everything that you need to do from the comfort of your room. But when there is a need that you really want to go out and talk to a person, you will be able to do that because that setup will also have to be maintained. So, nowhere am I saying that we are looking at a world where the workplaces will disappear altogether. That's not going to happen.
Shrink.
It will shrink. It will shrink. It will become flexible. So today you have a designated cubicle. Maybe tomorrow there will be floors where you'll have to book your cubicle if you're going to be in the office. So maybe you and your team are expecting to be working together collaboratively for the next 7 days on a project. Everybody books in for something where they can sit and work collaboratively. 7 days back, you could be back working from home again, and some other team could be looking at it. So, what I'm trying to say is that the flexibility is going to increase. And why I think that's a good thing is because we have to get past this concept that people have to peer over the shoulders of their juniors to get them working. We have to get past this peculiar concept that you have to be in office as long as the boss is in office. I don't know, in the media, you probably don't have these constraints, but if you look at legacy institutions like our bank, 100% it's there. It's there. I had to repeatedly tell my guys, look, guys, go home. It doesn't matter if I have gone home or not, because I know I can get you on the mobile. Why the hell are you hanging around? Just go home, be with your family. But there is this fear that if I leave before my boss does, somehow or the other, I am being shown up as not being efficient enough or not being committed enough, which is all nonsense. And also, why I am very keen about this is, you know, that the workforce participation of women in India is actually falling. But we have a very large number of well trained women who are sitting at home, not able to work because they can't get out of the house. They are the primary caregivers because of which they are at home. Okay. Now, imagine the flexibility which these women can then get, because they can be the primary caregiver and still work. I know that the stress will be great on them, because if you are a primary caregiver, there is a stress. You will now add to it the stress of working. But what will happen is that that primary caregiving role doesn't go on forever. You know, children grow up and go back to school, so you can resume your career full force then. Parents, if they are unwell, they become well. Okay, so then you can resume your career again. But today, in those situations, people actually have to put a stop to the career, step out, and then God help them trying to step back in. Even if they step back in, they will come in at a lower level. Yeah, their peer group will have moved up, and that isn't nice. So I think, you know, the flexibility that this has created is actually very good for all of us. It gives us a choice, and choice anywhere is always welcome.
Of course, it's pro-consumer as well. And what we're seeing in India also is so much innovation. You know, I think we're just scratching the surface when it's coming to fintech, and perhaps we're spearheading that in the world. During the lockdown, look what Geo Platform has done, pulling in all the big players, the FANG and all of that. So, Ms. Bhattacharya, I want to ask you that with specific respect to fintech and how fintech is growing, and it has shown it is capable of growing during COVID-19. Isn't there less reliance on banks today? And therefore, won't banks have to innovate? And, you know, going beyond just an app to lend or to have a customer care app and things like that, or they'll get left behind.
No, so, you know, I think whether it be banks or whether it be any other established industry, innovation is something for which you have to make space. Okay, it is difficult because innovation is a area where you can fail, and in fact, 8 times out of 10 you will fail. And within a bank or within an established legacy organization, if you are doing something which could fail, is not a good thing, because failure is not given any credit. Okay. So to have an atmosphere of innovation is very difficult. I remember in the bank when I was there, what we had done with the board's consent was create a 200 crore fund. And that fund was meant for partnering with fintech companies who were into areas that had adjacencies with our interests. Okay. So we had a team also comprising of few very reputed outsiders who could actually look at these fintechs, and then they had a choice. They could seed fund them, or we could have a JV, or we could have an agreement for transaction by transaction pricing. So all of it could be done. And this was given to a separate team with a separate budget. Because had I put it together alongside of everything, it sometimes loses focus. And sometimes, as I said, because there are failures, people are unwilling to take those large bets. But I think innovation per se is something that has to be nurtured in a bank. Now, today, for instance, in India, you have the ability to close down a card if you're not using it. As you know, in SBI as well, if you have got into an ATM, you can open the app and you can press a button, and your ATM card will be opened up for you to transact. And as you are stepping out of the ATM, it can be closed down. Now, that app was developed by us in-house in a hackathon after we realized that a lot of the older clients were unwilling to take an ATM card and go to an ATM and preferred to come into the branch and queue up for 45 minutes. Okay. So it was done after one of those visits that I had to one of these very, very crowded branches. And, it won one of the innovation awards. So, and that is an innovation mind, Antara, you won't find anywhere else in the world. It's a truly Indian jugaad innovation. But the fact of the matter is it's good jugaad. Okay.
No, I have to say, digital transactions and the way fintech has evolved in India, or even banks, it's something we all need to be proud of. Like if you go to America to just transfer money from one branch to another can take up to 2 to 3 days. It doesn't happen in India. It is instantaneous. We're showing the world, which is why it's a proud moment where the WhatsApp India head at this festival says, we're talking of taking UPI overseas. Look at what Amazon Pay has had to say. You've had the NPCI chairman now talking about 1 billion transactions by 2025. And that's why I was asking you, won't banks have to innovate? If you're going to have 1 billion transactions a day by 2025, what's the future of the brick and mortar banks? That's why I was asking you, ma'am.
No, I think, the brick and mortar banks will also evolve. And I think there is space for everybody. I don't think that traditional banks will go totally bust. I think they will evolve, but they must evolve.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you don't want to be like dinosaurs. You don't want evolution to go ahead and you get left behind. The agenda for evolution and innovation is huge. So people have to transform. There is no doubt about it. I don't think, and this I was saying on some other platform, that at one point of time, being digital and data driven, people used to think it is nice to have. Today, it's no longer nice to have. It is an imperative. If you don't do it, then you get left behind. Because data is very empowering. Data gives you a lot more insight. And as it gives you more insight, it ensures that you have better risk management. It opens up new market segments for you. It tells you how to get more done with less effort. Which of the leads are the ones that you really need, that really look as though they will close, and which of the leads are just noise? So it gives you so much of power to do more with less, that this is something that if you do not adapt and do not really passionately adapt, then it's something that is definitely going to hurt.
Let me take a cue from what you said about risk management. Now, with the explosion of fintech, it has to be done responsibly. You have to make sure that only those that are worthy of the credit also get the credit. Otherwise, you're going to have a new kind of an NPA crisis. We still haven't solved the old one. How real is this fear? Because, we've got young entrepreneurs, new startups that are coming up, which are redefining the way money is lent. Are we keeping pace with that? How are our risk management evolving?
So, if you look at the young fintechs and if you look at the banks, each one has an advantage. The young fintech is very agile and is able to use cutting edge technology. However, you are over here talking about banking. And banking, there is a prerequisite of trust. Now, young companies do not have that trust, mainly because they are too young. People haven't seen them long enough. However, the old legacy banks, on the other hand, they may not be so agile, they may not have the cutting edge technology, but they have trust. So I think, the ideal situation is where the two get into the partnership so that they can leverage off each one's strength. So that's the probable outcome in the times going forward. And we are seeing that, there is a lot of shakeup that is happening with fintechs approaching the big players, because they also understand that there is a limitation to their balance sheet. Their balance sheet also can't take, things in an unlimited fashion. They have to have it supported by the balance sheet of a much stronger organization. And similarly for the banks, they are also finding that instead of reinventing the wheel, here is somebody who's already done it. So you might as well get into partnership with them and then give the offering to your clients. So I think, there is a win-win solution out there. It does not have to be, win-lose. It can be win-win. We need to have the foresight and the ability to collaboratively get that.
So we're going to perhaps see more. It started to happen, the partnerships, but that perhaps is going to increase. Ms. Bhattacharya, I'm going to take two questions from the audience now. The first one isn't ensuring employee productivity challenge while working remotely? I know you touched upon this, but it came after that. How is Salesforce trying to ensure employee productivity while at the same time ensure their well-being?
So, one thing is that in Salesforce, there is a lot of emphasis on employee well-being. So we have not only come out with special COVID packages, but we have regular events, which are called Be Well camps, where there are speakers who will explain many things, whether it is queries you may have on your physical health, queries that you may have about your anxieties and stress and how to take care of those. Just fun events take place, which could be concerts, which could be, something like a scavenger hunt. So all kinds of things, to make sure that employees are also putting their tools down for a while. Okay. We also try and tell our employees that even though you are at home and the work and home time seems to be running together, try and distinguish between the two. You don't have to keep your screen on and keep on jumping at it the moment something lands there. It'll wait for you to come back next morning.
Bosses are listening.
No, no, no. I think the expectation is very clear. We don't want employee burnout. We understand that this is a very stressful time, and we therefore want our employees to stay well. As for productivity, see, productivity at the end of the day is spoken by numbers. All of us have certain numbers to achieve. Now, if we are achieving those numbers, then why should I bother as to whether I have achieved it by, being on the call 15 hours a day or being on the call 8 hours a day? It doesn't matter, because I also know that those numbers cannot be achieved by being on the call 3 hours a day. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have certain targets that are set out for you. If
Yeah.
I'm achieving those targets, so if it's a support person, then whether I am able to turn around the request within a particular period of time. If I'm a salesperson, whether I'm able to achieve the target. If I'm an R&D person, whether I'm able to complete the process within a period of time. There are thousands of ways in which you can ensure that the employee productivity is as is envisaged or as is promised. Okay. And you will
Okay.
find, actually speaking, that when employees are less stressed, they are actually working better. Even during these COVID times, our R&D piece, for instance, in out of India, they have filed for 4 patents, and I think 7 more are pending. So it's not as though anything has stopped. You can collaborate on media such as this. Cisco WebEx is definitely one of the platforms, but there are so many others. And, the fact is that probably because we are not having to commute, because we are not having to give that buffer time, of getting ready, going out, maybe we are actually getting a little time more. Having said that, I do realize that a lot of people are having to do a lot of housework. And that actually is very stressful. At least for me, it is. So I'm sure it must be so for the others. But if you leave that aside, I think, considering the fact that this is a difficult situation we are in, I think we have managed it quite well. And at Salesforce, especially, there's been a lot of comfort given by the company. We have also declared to all our people that they are at liberty to work from home till the end of this year. So even when the offices are reopened, they will have a choice of continuing to work from home till the end of the year.
And in fact, we see a lot of innovation perhaps being accelerated, a lot of business plans that have been accelerated simply because of the lockdown, something that was supposed to happen 2 years later. You had to see entrepreneurs, fintech at large, having to accelerate those plans and preempt them. And I thought yesterday, one of the biggest announcements that was made was, of course, the autopay for UPI, but then you also had the Aadhaar architect, Nandan Nilekani, talking about the Open Credit Enablement Network, which has been called as a game changer, connecting small businesses, bringing them to the marketplace, just redefining the way we actually have credit offtake in the country. Do you,
Yes.
as a veteran banker, can indeed be a game changer?
Yes, of course, because I have sort of been connected to it in the beginning and somewhere in the middle of the conversation when this platform was getting done. Because this is being done by a team called iSpritz, which Nandin mentors. And it's a team of volunteers. They work out of Bangalore and they are into delivering such platforms for public good. See, at the end of the day, what changes the game is access. Okay. Access to credit, access to new markets, access to products. Timely access is always a game changer in any market. Okay. So if this platform provides the timely access where customers come and say that, I want a loan, and you have all the material to take the decision, the underwriting decision that can be pulled in from the aggregator platform, which we already have in India. And then, there are the lenders on the other side who are today saying that we don't see good proposals. So on their side, they can then check whether this particular proposal is something that meets their underwriting norms and go ahead and bid for it. And again, if there are five lenders wanting the same loan, ultimately the one that gives the best bid will win. So, in this context, everybody is a winner. The lender is getting far superior underwriting done, the borrower is getting the lowest price, and both are getting access to each other, which otherwise may have been very difficult. So,
Yeah.
I want the loan, I don't know how to go about it, I don't know who to go to. There is definitely somebody on the other side willing to lend, but I don't know how to get to them. So, these platforms, what they do is they connect the giver and the taker in a very efficient way to the advantage of both, and therefore this is something that should definitely work.
And then, having said that, Ms. Bhattacharya, have you noticed that maybe since the explosion of fintech, the banking landscape at large, whether it is the traditional banks, the fintechs, have they grown the market? Like a lot of people who may not have ever dreamt of taking a loan or ever dreamt that they could get a loan or they should get a loan. Has that changed?
So I was just looking at SBI and the amount of overdrafts, okay, that the Jan Dhan Yojana people have become eligible for. So today, we have 120 million Jan Dhan accounts, okay, in the bank, and the amount of deposits there is 38,000 crores, okay. So that's $4.5 billion. Impressive, right? And the fact of the matter is that there is an average balance of 2,449 in these accounts. And the amount of OD that people have become eligible for is something like 21 lakhs. Okay. So now imagine the market that has got opened up. These are all people who are new to market. Okay. They didn't have accounts till we did the PMJDY. Okay. So just imagine that in the 2 or 3 years' time, we now have people who are considered marginal, savers. Even amongst them, we are having the ability to lend up to 21 lakhs. So that's not a small sum. So,
No, no.
these are ways of opening up the markets. As I said, India is a mass market. How do you ensure that even if it's a mass market, you do a class act so that you address them in the best way possible? Okay, and that is where technology plays a big part. It is the platform on which you can actually not only innovate on the market and the product, but you can innovate on the way you actually do the thing by making it far more immediate, making it far more timely. So all of that follows. And because you now can identify individuals on account of, again, your Aadhaar database, it becomes very easy to ensure that there is compliance, there is discipline, because the person will know that if I am not disciplined, if I don't pay back one loan, I will get reported to some credit bureau, and thereafter I will not be able to get any loan. Now, earlier it was very difficult, to actually pinpoint a person. If they change their names a little, if they change their addresses, there was no way of finding out whether this is the person who actually made that default. Today, because of the Aadhaar number, and though there is so much of pushback on that, but because there is that Aadhaar number, we know that this individual A is individual A, no matter what name he goes by. Okay.
But Ms. Bhattacharya, when we talk about this explosion and while we celebrate it, as we all really must, like I said, it comes with great responsibility. And with that also has to be cybersecurity. Now, in the last 3 months, we've all read of quite a few cases where there have been breaches. The fear is you have to be a step ahead of the hackers. If a guy loses his money once from an account, he, his family, and his entire circle is going to log off digital banking, right? That's just the way it works. How is India prepared for this? We still talk about how the laws have not kept pace, but in the absence of that?
So one thing that I want to say is, this is something that really worries anybody who's using technology. And it is correct that they should be worried about it. because this is something that's very, very important. And frankly, this is something that they really need to take care about. Okay. But it's also true, that we have to do far more education of our people at large, because the chain is only as strong as the weakest link. And normally, here, the weakest link will be the consumer, because the consumer is not aware of the kind of activities that can happen. And believe me, it's the gullibility of the consumer that is taken advantage of time and time and time again. So suddenly you get a SMS saying that you are the winner of a lottery and you should call such and such a number of a reputed bank and give your account details and you'll get the money. Now tell me, why should you call up that number and believe it to be of a reputed bank? Why should you not question that? That's not questioned. Similarly, I know that there are people who want to talk to the bank. They Google for the phone number of the bank. They find that phone number, call that person. Mind you, that is a bogus phone number. Okay. So even on the net, there are traps laid everywhere. And unless and until the consumer is aware that I will not, simply not part with certain details about myself and about my account. Unless and until we can do that, we won't be able to close the loop. So while I think, anybody, any responsible bank spends a lot of time, effort, and money on ensuring that your data security is maintained, it is also incumbent on the part of the customer to stop getting deluded into feeling that, they are safe just because the bank is taking care. They need to take care as well.
So with that message of hope, should I say, and I'm sure that's a big business opportunity. We still don't have a unicorn in India, which is into the business of cybersecurity. And look what's happening globally. Even Twitter was not spared, right? So with that, Ms. Bhattacharya, we run out of time. I'd like to thank you for taking the time from your busy schedule and being so candid. With that, I'll hand it back to the session coordinator.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nayantara.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, Nayantara, for a wonderful session. But unfortunately, we have to cut it close. So it's over from us in this hall. Please stay tuned for the next session.